Welcome to Fox Soul's Black Report. This is a space where we bring you Black America's headlines, news, views, and opinions. I'm Romeo.
Hey there, I'm Brooke.
I'm Demi. And I'm Melissa. On today's report, civil rights attorney Michael Sterling is back to discuss a troubling story coming out of Louisiana. Morehouse debate team withdraws from a tournament due to anti-black taunts, and a court rules on a black man enslaved by a white boss.
It's Republican lawmakers versus Black history in schools. We'll show you what's happening. Plus, we have an update on Derek Chauvin's sentencing. Find out what the Minnesota AG wants. And we're breaking down the federal proposal to ban menthol cigarettes with two special guests.
Dante Wright's family and hundreds of protesters call for police reform. Numerous tornadoes sweep through Mississippi. Find out what airport dethroned the Hartsfield-Jackson Airport in Atlanta as the busiest airport. And also, we're giving you a dose of young, gifted, and black coming all the way from Nigeria.
That is so true. We have all that and so much more. So if you're ready, it's our voice and our truth. Let's get it.
To me, this reeks of conflict of interest.
Do we know if he actually waved a gun? We only hear one side of the story.
This just really did make me feel good that the justice system did what they needed to.
We're going to keep following this story, and we will have the latest for you. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. Morehouse and Spelman colleges pulled out of a national debate tournament after Morehouse students say they experienced anti-blackness. Morehouse is a historically black college and university, and we're talking about the Penn United States University's Debate Championship 2021. The Undefeated first reported this story. The Morehouse team says rival teams mocked them with anti-black sentiments and disrespect. The Undefeated identified the University of Hawaii as one of the schools that had some students mocking the team. We're told the students broke tournament rules by turning on their Zoom cameras while the Morehouse team was speaking and rolling their eyes at the Morehouse students and mocking their voices. When Morehouse withdrew, sibling college Spelman chose to withdraw in solidarity. Clemson and Vanderbilt universities both followed suit. At this point, the entire tournament was canceled and replaced with a forum on anti-blackness and racism within the debate community. So, the issue here for the Morehouse students wasn't even just the other students. They also felt like there was anti-blackness in the judging. Let me tell you what else they say happened. They say, there was a debate, and the topic was how children's stories may be modified to enhance their marketability and reach wider audiences. So the Morehouse team used examples from the African diaspora and indigenous peoples. And so their coach says the judges told them afterward that they had initially ranked them very high, but then they docked their score because all of their examples were from the global South. So the Morehouse team was frustrated by that. They were upset by that, essentially, because they were like, the idea that we would get our ranking docked because we are using this time to pinpoint stories about marginalized communities, and that happens to be where they are. Mm-hmm. They were frustrated by that, so they actually complained. They complained to the entire tournament team and were told that there would be a statement on, I think, racial equality coming. Mm-hmm. That statement didn't come. They were told, okay, it's still coming. It's not ready yet. So they decided that they were going to withdraw, which essentially made a statement on racial inequality on their own.
Yeah, big time. It definitely did.
Yeah.
I mean, and then the tournament issued a statement saying that they take full responsibility for the anti-blackness. Why are you not ahead of that to begin with? Like, when you see things are going on, you should jump in right away. It got to a point where they pretty much shut it down. And these are men that are winners. We're talking about a school that's winning all the time. So the fact that there's such winners, maybe there were sore losers out there. Mm-hmm. Didn't appreciate that.
Well, I feel like it's really a threat to be, black already, but it's a threat to be black and to be smart. And, Romeo, like you said, the whole tournament ended up being canceled because, of course, I love the solidarity between Spelman College, Clemson, and Vanderbilt as well. And Spelman said, this is our brother, our sibling college, so we're going to stand firm with them. So I like that they did that, but also, this wasn't the first time that this team, it says that they experienced this as well. They said that a competitor once told them that black people are not capable of attending a 4-year institution. So, this wasn't the first time that it happened. And, also, I like that the whole thing had to be shut down. We aren't afraid of losing opportunities, losing jobs, where we once were before afraid of speaking out. Now I love it that we're using our platform and we shut the whole thing down. I love it.
Powerful.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, a court has ruled for a black man who was effectively enslaved by his white manager to be paid $546,000 for the 5 years he was forced to work without pay, according to Yahoo News. Bobby Paul Edwards coerced John Christopher Smith, who has a learning disability, to work for more than 100 hours a week at the J&J cafeteria in Conway, South Carolina, between 2009 and 2014. Mr. Edwards was sentenced to 10 years in prison in 2019 after being investigated by the FBI and was ordered to pay Mr. Smith a little over $273,000 in restitution. But the Court of Appeals ruled on April 21st that Mr. Smith should receive double that amount because of the delay between completing his work and receiving payment. Judge Paul V. Niemeyer ruled minimum wages and overtime compensation must be paid on a current basis as work is done, such that an employee receives the prescribed compensation without delay. Edwards kept Mr. Smith isolated from his friends and family in a tiny apartment attached to the restaurant and forced him to work up to 17 hours a day, 7 days a week. He was finally removed from J&J cafeteria after the relative of a restaurant employee alerted authorities about the abuse. This story is beyond horrific. So the charges that he faced were second-degree assault, attempt to establish peonage, slavery, involuntary servitude, or human trafficking. So Smith started working at the restaurant in 1990 at the age of 12, which I don't know how that's legal, but I digress on that. He said the place was managed by Edwards' relatives at the time, but when Edwards started to manage the place as of 2009, that's when his pay disappeared as well as decent treatment. He kept him in an apartment that was attached to the restaurant. It wasn't fit for, for human life to reside there. It was roach and rat infested. It was awful. Smith says that while he was being held captive, isolated from his family and forced to work 100 hours a week, he felt like he was in prison and the threat of death was constantly upon him. He alleges that over the years he was whipped with belts, kitchen pans, punched multiple times, burned with grease. Other employees who were aware of this and heard or saw the abuse were afraid to do anything because they were all terrified of Roberts. So it's amazing that it took 5 years for this to happen, and it happened from a relative of somebody who worked in the place that alerted authorities.
Melissa, that's exactly what the first thing that I was thinking when I read this was, why did anyone say anything? You think that someone had to want to speak up, but like you said, that fear. And also what I was thinking about, I like that he's getting money for his back pay, but I mean, you mentioned so many things about him getting beaten and stuff like that. I feel like there also should be a case for pain and suffering as well, because and mental, I feel like there should be totally another case that should be filed for pain and suffering mental abuse on top of just back pay.
Yeah.
On the outside looking in, I just want to know, where's the family? Where are the friends at? I mean, seriously, I mean, here's a man that you obviously you're not seeing that much because he's working all these hours. You're probably not seeing it all. There has to be some level of concern.
Yeah.
It's frustrating, just taking advantage of, our community's most vulnerable, right? A man with a learning disability, a man who should be lifted up and people should be taking care of him, not taking advantage of him, and seeing how this happened over and over and over again. And also just thinking about, even when we have, we don't have back-breaking jobs like that, but like when you work multiple days without a day off, you know what I mean? It's hard on you. And can you imagine doing that for years without barely hours off?
Yeah.
I mean, working in hospitality alone, just for like a 4 to 5 hour shift daily is a lot. So I couldn't even imagine.
Yeah, that is true. All right, dozens of Senate Republicans called on the Biden administration on Friday to withdraw what they say is a divisive education proposal that would place greater emphasis on slavery and the contributions of Black Americans in history and civil lessons taught in U.S. schools, according to Reuters. The Republican lawmakers zeroed in on the proposal's mention of the New York Times Pulitzer Prize-winning 1619 Project, the initiative which traces U.S. history from the arrival of the first enslaved Africans in colonial Georgia, was a frequent target for former President Donald Trump, who sought instead to promote patriotic education. The letter released on Friday came 2 days after Senator Tim Scott, the senator's sole Black Republican, declared that America is not a racist country in the Republican response to President Joe Biden's address to Congress. Scott also defended a new Republican voting law in Georgia that Democrats have denounced as a return to Jim Crow segregation. Now, part of this letter, it read, Americans do not need or want their tax dollars diverted from promoting the principles that unite our nation toward promoting radical ideologies. I mean, that's meant to divide us. We know what Tim Scott's about. We saw that last week. A lot of people felt some type of way. He's going to say this, and then you have those Trumpsters who's going to chime in on this. At the end of the day, history has to be told. The truth has to be told. It's
Right.
important.
That makes all kids better. This idea that kids should be dumber because our history is embarrassing is horrifying. We should be taught about that. Not only that, but kids should also be taught about how it affects everyday lives, which I think is a really good aspect of the 1619 Project, which is simply just mentioned in this proposal. And that has just become this this angry far-right talking point, the 1619 Project. And it's always bringing up historians who say, well, no, this isn't true or this isn't true, and nothing about the fact that historians are all throughout the project. Helping build the project. But yeah, this is ridiculous. So much of our history that we don't know, we don't learn.
No, apparently they don't want us to.
But these are the same people that are up in arms about all of the Confederate soldiers and, just everything that, these are the same people that are up in arms about Confederate soldiers and memorials and statues being removed. And, that's a part of the history. Yeah, so's this.
Yeah, exactly.
It's an important part of the history that people actually need to learn about because this is the part that hasn't been whitewashed.
You could say if more people knew about the history, more people would want those statues down.
Exactly.
So maybe this isn't an effort trying to protect it all comes full circle. That was a good point. That's because it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
All right, moving on here. The Food and Drug Administration just announced it's working towards a proposed ban on the sale of menthol cigarettes and flavored cigars. Studies show black smokers are more likely to prefer menthol flavored cigarettes. Some civil rights groups have pushed for this, saying black Americans are disproportionately affected by the tobacco industry's targeted marketing, while those in opposition say this is another form of over-policing black Americans, their legal choices. It's going to lead to over-policing. We have two guests with us here today to break it all down from each of their perspectives. I'm glad to welcome to the show Democratic strategist Jehmu Greene and Baptist Ministers Alliance Los Angeles President Reverend K.W. Tulloss. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Be here.
I am glad to have you both here. Menthol cigarettes are the last allowable flavored cigarette allowed on the market, becoming much more prevalent after the 2009 Family Smoking and Tobacco Prevention Act, which of course banned flavors other than menthol or tobacco flavored tobacco. So I want to know what both of you think about this proposal to ban menthol cigarettes. I'll start with you, Jehmu.
Well, I have to, I think, take a little bit from a good friend of mine who is a healthcare lobbyist, and she actually worked with the FDA to get to this ban. And she says tobacco is the devil. Bottom line, if we just count the number of people it kills, tobacco is the #1 health problem facing the Black community. And what does that break down to in numbers? That's almost 50,000 Black Americans who die from tobacco-related diseases every year. If you add up the number of Black Americans who die from being murdered, AIDS, drug and alcohol abuse, and car crashes put together, it still doesn't come close to how many Black Americans die from cigarettes. And you also have to then add on the layer of the targeting that these tobacco companies have done to get this flavored cigarette product into the hands of Black consumers that is more addictive, that is easier to start smoking initiation. It's almost criminal. If there is any sort of systemic racism we can point to within corporate America that is killing Black people, it is the use of menthol cigarettes. I could not be more behind this ban because ultimately it will save Black lives.
Reverend Tulloss, I want to let you jump in here.
Yeah, I appreciate those numbers that were shared and menthol being compared to the devil. I just wholeheartedly disagree. As a civil rights movement leader, I believe we have to preserve all people's rights. I don't smoke. I don't want anyone to smoke. I just don't believe banning a substance that 85% of African Americans choose to utilize is the way. Just as I don't believe banning flavor alcohol is the way to cure alcohol. If individuals in the community are hooked on menthol, I believe there should be different methods, such as educating them, hopefully getting them away from the menthol product. I just don't believe banning is the way. And if you ban something, I believe it's going to create a black market. It's going to create unintended consequences with law enforcement. And it's very important that we understand that. Don't put a ban on it. Let's put together some programs to help wean people off.
Okay, so the FDA has made it clear a ban would only address manufacturers and wouldn't address individual users, what they have in their possession, things like that. But what do both of you say about the opponents who worry this could lead to an underground market and more negative interactions with police and the black community? I'll start with you, Reverend Tulloss.
Of course. I mean, if you look at it, if you ban a particular product, it will create a black market. It will create individuals making their own product. People are struggling with cigarettes, and I don't think it's a good thing. And I think people need to be helped to get off of cigarettes. And of course, as I said earlier, I mean, if we put a ban on a particular product, it will create a black market where people will look for these things in other ways, and it will ultimately increase to, horrible exposure to law enforcement. So again, if we look at it from that perspective, from a smoker perspective, and not just a health perspective, I think again, I mean, a ban is not a good thing.
Jehmu, what do you say to that? This idea that it would lead to actual, more bad interactions with police officers?
Well, I think you have to first look at which agency this ban is coming from. Mm-hmm. It's Food and Drug Administration. That is focused on really stopping sales. It is not focused on, it is not the agency that focuses on criminalization. And I think that there is more work that the FDA can do to make that clear in working with states as a ban would be enforced. But the numbers don't lie. I hear the Reverend talking about educational programs that should be used instead of a ban on menthol cigarettes. And guess what? They've been used, they've been tried. And what have we seen happen? Where the rates of smoking have gone down in much higher numbers within white communities than black communities. And even when you look at, despite more quit attempts by African Americans, they are less successful at quitting than whites. I wonder why that is. Maybe it's because the majority of black smokers are smoking menthol, which is more highly addictive, which is easier to have you inhale that smoke. There is a reason they targeted black people with the most dangerous way, most highly addictive, most potent way of smoking. And we know what that is. We know how the leaders of these companies saw the black community, what their goals were, and to have this opportunity where you can fix the criminalization problem on one hand and solve a problem that is killing almost 50,000 black people every year in this country. It just is mind-blowing. One of the problems we're seeing is that tobacco companies have also been very, very active in black culture. They have funded sports, they have funded culture in so many different ways, music, they have funded community and civic organizations. And now you have a number of these organizations and leaders coming out and saying, oh, we shouldn't do this ban. I also find that very suspect.
So, Reverend, I want to go back to you because people are going to say, they're going to be watching this and they're going to say, as a pastor, how do you justify supporting something that is supporting something like cigarette smoking, and let me know if you're not outright supporting it, but people are going to say, we know that this is a danger, that cigarettes are a danger. What do you say to that?
Brooke, I totally agree with that assessment. Cigarettes are dangerous. I don't smoke. I don't want to smoke. I don't advise anyone else to smoke. I just don't believe banning is a way, because banning will create a black market. And we all know that. We have seen it. We have seen the war on drugs. We are now seeing a war on cigarettes. I do believe it is a problem. And I do believe it's far too many people that are losing their lives for the sensation of cigarettes. But if you're going to ban one, ban it all. That's what I'm saying today. Don't target the ones that African Americans are the African American choice of menthol. Again, if we as a community, again, we don't want to lose anyone to anything. And so at the end of the day, a ban on menthol is not the way to go. And so I don't support smoking, and I advise anyone that's smoking to put it down. But there's ways about getting people off. There's a whole lot of people that's addicted right now to menthol. And so you mean to tell me if you ban this, that addiction is going to disappear? Heck no.
Jehmu, I'll go back to you because there are going to be, critics who say this is reminiscent of those kind of sugary food bans, right? We see those all around and people speak out against them. They say they just police poor people, right? Police marginalized communities, not giving them the ability to make their own personal decisions about their bodies and their health, and that this is something that's similar to that. What do you say to those critics?
Well, I think we have to go back to how you started your report, where menthol is actually the last flavor that has not been banned when the Food and Drug Administration was very clear that flavored cigarette products were causing even more problems. They did take that action of taking those flavors off the market. And menthol is the last holdout. So I don't think that you can point to the argument of this policy having gone after Black Americans first. But again, you can look at all of the arguments that the opposition, in many ways, that has been supported by tobacco companies for decades, is making, and it just does not add up. The numbers do not add up. When you look at the healthcare problems facing Black Americans and the direct link to cigarettes, which is directly linked to the marketing and targeting of menthol products to our dear community, you have to say 1 + 1 = 2. And that's where we are with this ban. It's as simple as that. If you care about Black lives, then you would be supporting this ban because it will save the largest amount of Black lives out of all healthcare issues that we could tackle as a community.
So I have one last question. The FDA says tobacco products with menthol, and we've kind of talked about the addictiveness, and one of the main reasons why menthol products are so highly addictive is because they mask the unpleasant flavors and harshness of tobacco products, which the FDA says leads to the possibility of youth experimentation, leads to the proof of it, essentially, they say. So, Reverend, I'm going to go back to you because is there a positive here? We're talking a lot about adults, right, and choices and having your own agency, but is there not something positive here that this could potentially lead to lower initiation rates overall?
I just don't believe young people are smoking cigarettes. I mean, they're using the other products that other people are prescribing, marijuana, other things of that matter. If you look at the number, less than 1%, I got my numbers too, Doc. Less than 1% of young people choose menthol products. So, I mean, I'm talking about from the adult perspective. Young people should not have any type of product. It should be banned for them all anyway. At the end of the day, this law or these mandates are going to affect adults 18 and up. And this is a serious problem again. When you have bans, it's going to create a Black market, which is going to target Black people.
So, Jehmu, I know I saw you reacting there. I know you want to respond to this because the FDA does say this is also going to affect kids and that's a big, important part of this. So what do you say to what the Reverend just said?
I can understand, I guess, the Reverend not knowing young people who smoke menthol cigarettes. That's surprising. I think most people in our community would have a different answer to that. Young people do smoke menthol cigarettes, and smoking menthol cigarettes, it is easier to become a cigarette smoker because the menthol cools down the throat, does all of the things that the tobacco companies intended. And can we just get real with what a menthol cigarette is? It's a cigarette dipped in rocket fuel. That's what we're talking about, rocket fuel. We've got organizations and leaders fighting for the right for Black Americans to smoke rocket fuel? Is that where we are today? We have a lot of different ways of dealing with the criminalization problem. And that, I think, is something that's a fight that should be had. How can we lessen that reality? How can we make this something where it is penalized from the sales end, not penalized from the user end? How can we do more public education? All of that would be valuable. But to start at the place, the crux of the problem is to stop our young people and our adults from smoking rocket fuel. Basic.
Well, thank you both for being here. I do want to thank you both for being here. I absolutely enjoyed having your perspective, and I think our viewers did, our soulmates did as well. Thank you so much. Demi, I'll send it over to you.